Hello, welcome back, my favorite movement enthusiasts. Today we will be talking about one of the fundamentals and sadly two ignored movements or resting position. Now we are of course talking about the deep squat. If I had to recommend a single mobility exercise, it would be the resting squat or the deep squat position. Not only because it's one of the most natural movements that our body can take, but it's also designed to rest in this position as well as using it for bowel movements. Now, if you can't get into this position, chances are you have a range of motion deficit, most likely either in your ankles or in your hip joint. Now, depending on where the problem lies, you'll have to work differently on achieving the resting squat or the deep squat position. Not to mention that depending on your body's unique anatomy, your deep squat will look a little bit different than other people's. If your legs are longer compared to your torso in a ratio, or if your torso is longer compared to your leg, there will be a difference in your squat or deep squat execution. If your torso is longer, chances are you'll be a little bit more upright when you're in the deep squat position, while if your legs are longer, chances are you're going to be leaning forward just slightly more compared to the other one. It's also highly dependent on your hip sockets if they are shallow or deep, which will have an impact on how your feet are rotated and how deeply you can get into the deep squat itself and how deep it looks when you're sitting in it. Whatever it is, the only way to find out which deep squat position is right for you is going to be trying it out, sitting down and seeing which one feels more comfortable, because if it is not comfortable, your body will tell you and you will notice. If the position requires too much strength, for instance, from your tibialis, that means that you're falling backwards and you need a little bit more core strength or tibialis strength to keep you upright, which means that we need a little bit more mobility in our ankles as well as in our hips, which we can do by driving our upper body forward. In fact, this movement is so basic and so fundamental that I still use it for every single warm-up when I work on my mobility routines, as well as when I have a heavy leg day or any sort of leg day where I know I will have to use full range of motion to get into deeper positions for better training. Now, the easiest way to get into a deep squat position, if you can't already, is doing it laying down on your back. You can pull in your legs, simulating the deep squat and checking at what point you are starting to fall into the butt wink, which is if you have your back flat here, pulling in your legs closer and closer, at one point your butt will leave the ground, and that is basically the end of your deep squat mobility, where you are losing the perfect form. Now, the problem with thinking like that is that there is no perfect form for deep squats. The only thing that can help you with is find out which one of the deep squat resting positions is the most natural and the most comfortable for you. Meaning, when you pull in your legs, you can move them out, turn your feet out or inwards, and find out which one of these is most comfortable while your back is fully on the ground, and how far you can even pull your legs in before it is stop. Now, before we get into how to achieve a deep squat position or a resting squat position, if you don't know how to already, is that you can even increase the benefits of the deep squat by adding the tiniest adjustments. We already have a lot of mobility requirements in our ankles, knees and hips to get into this position. So this is already pretty advanced. However, you can even add your upper body by going into an overhead squat position, which will in time align your shoulders and your spine with your hips. Now, this is going to require even more core strength and even more mobility, but the benefits are myriad, especially for people who sit for prolonged periods of time at work or sleep on their side and therefore wake up with a lot of tension and a lot of tightness. There are two major problems people have when getting into a resting squat, and finding out which one is yours is pretty easy. If your problem is ankle mobility, the deeper you go into the squat, the more your heels will raise to bring you all the way down. That means your Achilles tendon as well as your gastroc and soleus are a little bit tight, and you need to work on making a smaller angle in your ankle. by moving your knees over your toes and reversing again. This one is a very easy stretching or mobility exercise you can work on wherever you are because it's really low impact and really low effort. All you need to do is change the angle from a smaller one to a bigger one. Forward, stretch the posterior part, and backwards. If you go far enough, stretch the anterior part of your lower leg musculature. Now, the other problem might be hip mobility, which means that the further you go down, the further you fall backwards, and at some point, due to a lack of strength or mobility in your hips and in your core, you will start falling backwards. Now, working on that can be as easily as working on hip flexor strength by extending one leg, raising it, and going back down and repeating this. Not only are we strengthening our hip flexors and our quads in conjunction, but also our lower abdominals, which ties into core strength, which means that once we start going down here, we'll at the very least have the strength to bring our upper body forward and hold it. So now that we know how to work on our ankle and hip mobility, we can use the resting or deep squat to work on everything that has anything to do with our hip, ankle and knee mobility. Just from this position itself, we can use internal hip rotation to work on our hips, knees and ankles like so. We can combine internal with external hip rotation and even turn a little bit sideways to add lumbar and thoracic rotation, because all of this works in conjunction with each other, meaning you cannot really isolate one of these parts for mobility, and that is good because we can work on everything simultaneously with one single set of movements. You can also use the deep squat to work on spinal flexion as well as spinal extension, and from this position on, that will be not only challenging but immensely beneficial to your mobility work as well as your natural body's positioning and posture. Now, if you are more advanced, then training how to get into a deep squat from different positions, not just from the standing one, is a must in my opinion, because learning to get into a resting squat position or even just a deep squat position will help you to limber and loosen up every single joint connected to the movement and strengthen every single muscle that is required to get you into the movement. As you can see, one of the most advanced calisthenics exercises for the legs is usually the pistol squat, and the strength you require for this exercise is basically the same strength you require for getting into a deep squat position, which is stronger hip flexors and stronger abdominals, because the hardest part about the pistol squat is not the up and down part, but it's from seated position into elevated position. From seated into elevated. And this requires a lot of hip flexor, quadriceps and abdominal strength. So if you have mastered sitting fully relaxed in a deep squat position, then learn how to get into it from the laying position. Like so. Sit up, pull yourself up into the deep squat. Learn how to get into it from a seated position like so, or even from a Turkish seat position, where you can pull your legs in and switch your standing position. I said position like 100 times now. So what I would recommend you do is, one, learn how to sit in this position for a couple of minutes at a time, multiple times in the day. The more you do it, the more comfortable it will be and the more benefits you will have for all kinds of sports related things, be it your calisthenics work, your lifting work, or even just isolation work. Having the mobility, the flexibility and the control over your body, especially in your lower extremities, is really important. And the older you get, the happier you will be that you learned it. Not to mention that the exercises we can start from here are absolutely insane and uncountable. Far too many to put into a dozen videos if I had the time or energy. So to reiterate what we can do if we cannot get into a deep squat position, well, we can start by working on our ankle mobility, either by moving forward and backward like so, or by doing static stretches. And I would recommend doing both static and dynamic mobility work for your ankles. The same thing goes for your hip flexors and hips in general. You can stretch them out by moving into a lunge position, which is going to lengthen your quadriceps and your hip flexors. And from here, you can sit back and pull your leg up, strengthening your quadriceps, hip flexors, and lower abdominals, and switch it up. Forward, stretch, reverse, strengthen. And of course, we're gonna switch legs so we work both sides equally. Forward into the stretching position, backwards sit down into the elevation or strengthening position. Now, as a bonus, a little bit of glute flexibility is also going to help you with this one. You can work on your glutes by simply laying down and pulling your legs in, as we demonstrated before, and keeping your back in full contact with the ground. Pull your legs in. You can do rotations as well to limber up that hip socket and to go through a range of motion that is relaxing, or at the very least feeling good to you. And if you want to experience being in a seated squat or a resting squat position for longer periods of time, yet you don't have the mobility yet, all you need to do is put anything below your feet that is going to elevate your heels and bring you into this position. One, it's going to be easier to stay upright in your upper body, and over time you're going to slowly reduce the elevation until your feet are flat and you're fully comfortable. Whatever you do, I would not recommend sleeping on this, because this is one of the most basic yet most effective movement or positions that we can actually learn and do, and it doesn't take as much effort as most people make it out to. You can play around with it, have a little bit of fun, and see if you benefit from this exercise. With that said, sadly, this is all the time I have left for you today. If you have any questions, drop them in the comments, like the video, subscribe, and check out other videos, because we have new ones on this channel every single day, and I mean that literally. Captain Cairo, peace out.